Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and you guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community, and someone has linked me another video by this guy, is it the Tomb8er, that's what he calls himself. And it seems to be another one of these Nick's G4P type channels where they are total shrines to professional bodybuilding by guys who don't even lift. Now, people are going to say, doesn't Nick lift? Well, Nick used to lift. I don't know if he does anymore. I can't tell that he's even serious about training, doesn't even put any training footage up. But this particular guy, Tom, doesn't seem to actually discuss lifting or training in any way. He just purely runs this shrine to professional bodybuilding, and he seems to be so enamored by it. But I saw some disturbing stuff in the video that he linked. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft and let's talk about this. Because this really is a problem. We look at the whole bodybuilding world and the ego lifting thing, and a lot of people will say, well, a lot of these bodybuilders, they are pretty strong. Well, of course they're pretty strong. They have big muscles, and you cannot separate size and strength, right? You can't truly separate them. The only thing that really starts separating it, now there's arguable data coming out, emerging data in the research, and I know Lyle McDonald, a lot of other people have been digging into this lately about differences in myofibrillar versus sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, turning out there actually might be a difference. In which case, again, coaches are now realizing if that is the case, then obviously really high reps, even for hypertrophy purposes, is going to be a bad idea for athletes. But that aside, people need to understand that even though you gain less strength per every unit of muscle that you gain from abusing anabolics in a dose-dependent relationship, meaning the higher the dose goes, the less strength you gain for every ounce of muscle that you put on, right? So you take these professional bodybuilders who use copious, ridiculous amounts of substances to get bigger, they're obviously going to be stronger than the average gym goer. They're, in many cases, going to be stronger than the average power lifter because they have 80 pounds of muscle on them, right? So it's not unreasonable. The problem we get into, though, is that a lot of them are not strong for their size. And even the guys that he displayed, a lot of them, truth be told, they weren't particularly strong for the amount of muscle that they have, meaning there are guys out there with less muscle who are just as strong. Now, before people jump up and say, well, Jason, isn't that expected? They're bodybuilders. No, that highlights the problem. That highlights the fact that what they did was not a result of training. It was a result of abusing anabolics. Because what you find in every single lifter you look at who uses very low doses of stuff, they gain a proportionate amount of strength, right? People who are either completely natural or people who use very small amounts of stuff tend to be very strong for their size if they've gained any appreciable amount of muscle. It's unavoidable, even in natural bodybuilders, right? Any of you who know truly natural bodybuilders who are jacked, they are strong. Like most of them, if you really know them, because I have some friends who are serious, hardcore, natural bodybuilders. They know I don't approve of the bodybuilding scene at all, or the lifestyle, even the natural, but they rival competitive powerlifters in the same weight, right? They can rival them. They can go toe-to-toe with competitive lifters. In other words, you start finding real strong, natural bodybuilders who are under 200 pounds. The norm is to see 500 plus pound squats. Like, I know guys who are 190 pound bodybuilders out there who squat 500 plus pounds raw, deadlift over 600 raw, rep out 315 on the pause bench 365 plus, right? That's normal. That's the norm. And they're not power lifters, have no interest in competing in powerlifting. Yet that's what they can generally do. And it has to do with the fact that you can't separate size and strength without abusing copious amounts of drugs. So when you see these guys and you realize that, okay, they're strong, but they're not that strong for their size, it starts to highlight the problem. It starts to highlight the problem in bodybuilding. And a thing that I've noticed in there was the amount of ego lifting. Like, lifts were highlighted. Oh, look how strong this guy is. And it's like spotters are helping, knee wraps, partials. I mean, he did this stuff like with Kai Green, for example. His elbows are wrapped up. Wearing elbow wraps. And people need to understand that's not supportive equipment. We talk about things like knee wraps. We talk about elbow wraps. That's not supportive equipment. That is weight lifting devices. In other words, those are physical objects that help lift the weight, meaning it doesn't help you lift more weight. It helps the weight lift. because it creates a springing effect. It creates external forces that can push against your joints and your arms and legs in such a way that the actual sleeves or the wraps produce their own separate force. It's not being produced by your muscles. Right? So in other words, it's the equivalent of someone coming over and helping grab 50 or 100 pounds and pushing that hard underneath the bar for you or underneath your elbows or knees or whatever. It's actually helping the lift. So it's not helping you lift more per se, it's helping the actual weight move up, independent of what your muscles are producing. So what I would say to a lot of this, not supportive equipment, you should just take some weight off the bar. If you just want your muscles to work, you should just take some weight off the bar. And there's a reason even in powerlifting and strength sports like that, usually elbow wraps are not allowed. Elbow sleeves are generally not allowed. And any division of where knee wraps are worn, they're a separate class. Because we know that you can get up to 80 or 100 pounds out of a pair of knee wraps on a squat, right? So we saw all these guys doing stuff like this, and we saw a lot of partial reps. We saw a lot of wraps. And the one guy he highlights about how strong he is, oh, he's just raw with no supportive equipment. The guy was not hitting depth on squats. Well, we kind of come back over to the point of what's the point? We know that squat depth is related to muscle activation, and if you cut above parallel, all the available research shows us what? You get less glute and less lower quad activation. I mean, aren't we doing squats to get bigger and stronger? So we start there just cutting range of motion on a squat, and then we want to call it strong, but it's not the proper depth. And it's not even just powerlifter depth, it's depth for gaining muscle. I mean, I thought these bodybuilders were trying to gain muscle. Isn't that the point? So it's like highlighting this when it's not even up to standard. And truth be told, for a guy at his body weight, that's not even, from a strength perspective, that amazing. It's strong. It's definitely strong, but it's not amazing. The guy's cutting depth. Same thing. He shows this guy doing walking lunges. It's like, well, so amazing, but he's got knee wraps on. He's got knee wraps on. How much force is being produced? I mean, you might as well just take 50 pounds off the bar and do it without the knee wraps. And it kind of comes back to that point of bodybuilders in general, bodybuilding fans not understanding anything about training. I mean, let's go over and let's talk about injuries. Let's talk about risk. Knee wraps are not supportive or protective equipment. They help you lift more weight at the detriment of your long-term health. Right? Knee wraps themselves are dangerous for your joints. There's research on it. There's data on that. Wrapping your knees is something you do as a competitive power lifter in which you're willing to sacrifice your joints to lift a heavier weight in a class that allows you to wear it. They're actually damaging to your body. So they're not supportive like as an injury prevention. They actually cause injuries. And for example, every guy I've ever seen who's torn a hamstring while squatting, another example, has done so while wearing knee wraps. Every person I've ever seen do it or known of. Is coincidence? I think not. So we're seeing all of these wraps and the ego lifts and the shorter ranges of motion. And I just look at it and it's just all this ridiculous ego lifting. All these guys doing partials, spotters helping them lift a big chunk of the weight, wrapped up. And it's just silly ass ego lifting. This isn't even about strength at that point. It's just guys on copious amounts of drugs who, yes, they can lift a lot of weight because they're on massive amounts of drugs and have gotten big from it, who are still ego lifting and just goofing off and not even lifting the heavyweights correctly. And again, he didn't want to actually highlight the couple of pros who actually are serious power lifters. Well, I'm not going to include them, even though they are your strongest bodybuilders, because he only wanted to talk about his glorious Olympia competitors, which again has its own problems. But the other thing that really bothered me was that he glorified someone like Dallas McCarver. And this kind of comes back around, and let's talk about the mentality of serious bodybuilding fans and showing of how detached they are from reality, that he really wanted to talk about Dallas McCarver in a positive light. Dallas McCarver died as a result of insane levels of drug abuse and body dysmorphia and masochistic behavior. And people say, well, what do you mean? Look at the blood serum levels of his testosterone during his autopsy. And what I mean is, do people understand physically what you have to do to get your testosterone levels that high? It's not just a case of, oh, he's eating a bunch of pills. This is a person who basically sat around all day long just injecting intramuscularly cc after cc after cc of testosterone. Okay? You need to understand that the quantities that we saw on his blood work is literally indicative of someone who is pinning upwards of 4 entire big pharmaceutical grade bottles of testosterone every week, like the multi-dose ones, to where, you know, that bottle is supposed to last you 20 weeks, like under your doctor's prescription. That's a guy who's basically pinning 4 of those bottles every week. You guys understand it, how many injections that is? And what I mean, let's take, for example, and a lot of guys complain, oh man, my weekly shot for my TRT hurts. Okay? That's half a cc. This guy's shooting 40, so he's taking the equivalent of 80 of those injections every single week all over his body to get his blood levels where they were. Guy is a junkie. The guy was a junkie who died in his 20s due to the damage he caused to his body. And then he really wants to highlight him in a positive way. And I'm sure if he had still been alive, then he would hold this title. And it's like, wow. Like, how can you people still uphold and worship this drug addict death cult? It just blows my mind. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.